morning. Steve said I can do whatever I want. So, what I say? Well, that's good to be here, like I said. We enjoy coming up. It reminds us of our home church, it's a country church. We have hard-working people, and it's good to be with you this morning. Why don't we just bow our heads for prayer and talk to you. The kind of reason I thought, Lord, again, we come to you, and again, we just thank you, Father, for your blessings. We thank you, Lord, for all you do for us. And I just pray now as we get into your word and we look at it a little bit, that each one of us will be blessed by it. We just pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, like I said, I enjoy coming here and seeing you. Many of you I know, some of you I don't, but that's fine. You probably don't know me either, so we'll go from there. But it's nice to be here. I've always enjoyed this church. I always have some beautiful young children that are here. It's good to be in a church, where you see young children, and you know that there is at least a pretty fair chance of a future, at least when you have young ones that are here in the church. And in our church too, we've always enjoyed the young kids. We have had our times with them, but we, for the most part, they are certainly a blessing, especially if you go to a church that doesn't have any. You know that there's something missing. As I start out here, and I want to look a little bit in the Bible a little bit, but there's a poem here that I have, and this poem kind of struck me a little bit, and I just kind of wanted to read it to you. It has to do with little children, and those of you that have children now, and I think probably even those of us that have had children that are grown and gone probably can appreciate some of the things in this poem, probably more so than those that are probably sometimes, would say, struggling with children at the present time. Well, let me just read this to you. And the name of the poem is Messy Fingers. And this is a poem by a lady by the name of Deborah Higgins. And it just goes on and it says, I better put the glasses on so I get all of the words. That's the beauty of life, isn't it? I've often thought about this, and I thought my eyesight is actually getting better, but I have to stand back there to read. Up close, and maybe there are others of you that are struggling with this problem. I guess in heaven we might be able to leave these home and leave, right? We'll leave them. Anyway, messy fingers, messy fingers. Sticky fingers, tangled hair. Scattered crayons everywhere. Fancy artwork on the wall, drawn by midgets 3 feet tall. Tell me why and tell me how. That was mine, I want it now. Fix my bite, buy me gum. If you have it, I want some. Dirty faces, grass-stained knees. Learning words like pretty please. Endless hugs and goofy wet kisses. Learning respect with Mr. and Mrs. Scraped up hands and falling down, tender tugs on my nightgown. Need more paper for Santa's letter? I wasn't so bad, but I'd been better. Watching a movie again and again. Mommy, please, put the tape back in. Messy fingers, hair gone wild, all in the life of a precious child. Sometimes, like I said, you look at this and you can think back on your own children and you can relate. You can relate all these things. And I can remember being there myself, and it's like, when is this going to end? You know what I'm saying? When are the questions going to end? Why? When are the messes going to end? When can we at least sleep a whole night, without having to get up and pay somebody or whatever? And you think about that. And you know something, those of us that are gone, it does end, doesn't it? Eventually they're gone. Eventually those messes aren't there. Eventually they grow up. And you know something, when you look at the Bible is all about the very same thing that I'm talking about. The Bible is about us growing up. God wants us to grow up as Christians. I want to look at Hebrews a little bit. In Hebrews 5, and actually Hebrews 5, starting at verse 11. Just a few verses here. And just before I even get into too much, I want to look at Hebrews. We know that Hebrews was written by Paul. And Paul is writing to the Hebrews here. He's writing to the Jewish people. He's writing to the people of the church. And what's going on here and what he's talking about and what he's trying to get across, is that Jesus has come and gone now. Jesus has been sacrificed. He died on the cross, he rose, he went to heaven, and now the Christians have almost kind of, especially the Jewish people, kind of fallen back into the same way they were before. They continued to run the sacrificial system. They didn't require the Gentiles to do it, but the Jews themselves were doing it. And Paul was concerned about this. He was concerned about this because he knew they couldn't depend on that system anymore. They couldn't be looking to that because they should be looking to Jesus. They should have looked to Christ. They should have recognized he was the ultimate sacrifice. It was the end of all that. And it was him in heaven now that they were to look for. And he's appealing to them. And he's talking to them. And that's what he writes in this in these few verses that we're going to look at here this morning. In the book of Hebrews. And in chapter 5, and so we just start out here, it just says in chapter 5, verse 11, it says, "We have much to say and hard to explain, since you have become dull of hearing." Now keep in mind, he's talking to the Hebrew people, he's talking to the Jews, he's talking to those of us in the church. It says, "For though by this time you ought to be teachers," and you should have been teachers by now, but here you're not there yet. You need someone to teach you again the first principles of the oracles of God. And you have to come to me, milk, not solid food. You know, I can remember with my own children, and all of you can remember too, those of you that have them and those that have. They started out with maybe mother's milk at the beginning, and they started out and they continued and they progressed, they got teeth, they progressed, and eventually they went to solid food. I can remember my own son. I don't know how old he was. He wasn't very old. He was still in the crib. He wore those pajamas. Maybe they still make them, I don't know. But they had those feet on it, you know, that kind of plastic on it. I don't know what they were. But anyway, you could hear him walking, sliding down. Anyway, one evening we'd all gone to bed, and he was in bed, and it was late at night or whatever, and my wife and I woke up to the sound, and we could hear him now crawling out of his crib. And he crawls out of his crib. He was down the hall from us, and we could hear him going down the hall with those feet in his pajamas. He gets into the kitchen, we can hear him opening the fridge, kind of banging around in there, gets his bottle, closes the fridge, goes back to his room, climbs up in his crib, and proceeds to have lunch. And I remember saying to my wife, I said, "I think our boy's going up." But I mean, that was what it was all about, and that's what it is about when you have children. They progress. Now, that particular habit with him didn't end there. When he was in high school, of course, he doesn't have the pajamas anymore, he's forgot the bottle. But he still, in the middle of the night, you can hear him out there making something. Probably a full course meal or whatever, I'm not sure, but he always was doing that. But he had progressed to solid food. And this is what Paul is talking about here. He's talking about that you need to understand it, but he says, "You have come to need milk and not solid food." He's saying you should be eating solid food already, but you're not. You're still just milk. You're still just infants. You were supposed to be the teachers. You're the ones that are supposed to be out there teaching, and here you haven't been there. But then it goes on. It says, "For everyone who partakes only of milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness." He's saying you're not good, you're unskilled. And it says, "For he is a babe, but solid food belongs to those who are mature." That is, those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern good and evil. When you look at that verse there, we back up a little bit and we go back to verse 14 again. In the beginning it says, "The solid food belongs to those who are mature." Some Bibles would say perfect, some Bibles would say full age. In other words, you should have matured till then. In Hebrews and in the Greek, that particular word, mature, can be translated perfect. In Hebrews it is used 11 times. Paul uses the word perfect in the book of Hebrews. It says in, he uses the word, the Greek word actually is telos. Is the Greek word, and it can be translated perfect, it can be translated complete, whole, full-grown, mature. In Hebrews 8 and 9 of chapter 5 it says, "Son, though he was, Jesus, learned obedience from what he suffered. and once made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him. In Hebrews 2:10 it says, it is fitting that God, for whom and through whom everything exists, should make the author of their salvation perfect through suffering. And in Hebrews 10:14 it says, for by one sacrifice Christ was made perfect forever those who are being made holy. And in another chapter in the New Testament, actually in Matthew, a verse that I'm sure you're all familiar with, in Matthew 5:48, it says, be perfect therefore as your Father is perfect. Now, we look at that and we ask the question, as it says as we were reading here and we're looking, what is Paul trying to tell us here? And the question that I want to ask is, how much of this has to do with, and think about this, how much of this has to do with sin and quitting sinning? Or are we to become perfect? You know, and that's a question. I know we even touched on it a little bit in our Sabbath school lesson today. It's not only a question, it's a question that's been floating around even in the churches. Are we to become perfect where we no longer sin? Or is perfection a spiritual state we reach when we finally get to heaven? I'm asking you, how serious should we take this notion of being made perfect? And living in the times we live in, is it even more important than ever before? Or is it even possible? Can we be perfect? Let's continue looking at this a little bit. And we'll talk about it a little bit. Let's turn to Hebrews 12. We go on to Hebrews 12. When you read Hebrews 12, starting with verse 1, you find Paul talking again here. And this kind of makes it even more interesting as we kind of delve into this particular thought. He says, therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. Now, what is Paul talking about here? We are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. Paul is talking about actually the previous chapter, chapter 11 in Hebrews. He's talking about this famous chapter we're all familiar with, the faith chapter. It could be the individuals that Paul has spoken about in past history that are people that are known for their faith. And let's just look at these particular people, and let's look at them in the sense of, had they achieved perfection? Is it something that in their life, what they have done? And we'll go and we'll start. We'll just start in verse 4 and we'll start looking at the first one, Abel. You know Abel, actually the first one that was killed. He was killed by his brother. It says, by faith, Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice. Well, I'm not sure Abel would qualify because he actually died offering a sacrifice for his sins, so he probably wasn't there. Well, then you have Enoch, and we all know about Enoch. Enoch actually was translated, so possibly Enoch had achieved that. But as we go on to verse 8, we look at Abraham. And we look and we think about the life of Abraham. Well, of course, Abraham was one who had that fiasco with 2 wives, and then also he lied about his wife, and there were some other issues there, so I'm not sure Abraham probably would be the best. So let's continue going, and we look by faith, Jacob. Well, Jacob, you know, there were some issues there with Jacob, especially when he was young, with the deception that he had with his brother there, and there were some other issues. And actually, the name Jacob means cheater, so we'll probably go on to Moses. In verse 23, it says, by faith, Moses. Well, Moses, when you think about Moses, he killed an Egyptian, didn't he? And then, even standing on the precipice of going into the promised land, he disobeyed God. He struck the rock. He wasn't even able to go into the promised land. So maybe not Moses. Well, then we go on and we look here at some others. And we look at some others. We look at Rahab. Well, maybe Rahab, but then it starts in verse 37 by Rahab the harlot. So maybe we won't even talk about Rahab. And we'll just go on to Samson. And of course, you know Samson. His life was rather, and then of course you have David, and well, we know a lot of things about David that weren't the greatest in the world either. So, looking at this, and you look at this, after we look at this list of faith that God has put together, it's probably obvious that the best use of the word